Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of my EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful day. And as always, wherever it is that you're joining us from around the world, thank you for your support. We appreciate all the likes, the shares, the follows. Thank you so much for all the lovely messages and the comments and for sharing our content and finding value in our content. Thank you, as always, from the bottom of my heart. As you know, we do what we do for you to bring you amazing conversations. And today is no different than any other episode. Today, I have a wonderful guest that I have been following on LinkedIn for quite a while, probably more than a year now. She puts out amazing content. She really puts herself out there, but she also gives great strategies and great learning about L&D and ID. And I know we're talking acronyms right now, but we'll definitely break that down right now in just a second. But I would love to welcome to the show today Holly Owens. Holly, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Fonz. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. And like I mentioned, just a longtime follower, a big fan of your work. And also,
Ditto.
also, I do want to share. Thank you so much for your support because I know you're always, engaging with the post, you're always sharing. And also, thank you so much for all the support through Yellow Dig as well as being one of our show sponsors. So I really appreciate
Of
you
course.
seeing value in what we do and just bringing these conversations into our education space to continue to grow. So thank you so much. But Holly, before we get started and dive into the world of L&D and ID and of course AI, so talk about an alphabet soup there. Can you give us a little brief introduction and what your context is within the education space?
Absolutely. My context within the education space currently is higher education. So,
Okay.
working at Yellow Dig as a growth marketer, our main ICP, our target client is higher education students and faculty. So, I started out my career as a K to 12 teacher, as many guests of your show have, and many people that listen to my show are also. So I then from there I switched over into e-learning developer with the government for about 6 months, and then I went to higher education as an instructional designer, instructional technologist, doing all the ed tech trainings, helping people design courses. Spent the better part of my career in higher education. Started teaching in higher education as well. I've been adjuncting since 2012. I currently work at Touro University, which is a university based in New York, Manhattan, remote, of course, because I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina. Um, and then after higher education, I got into instructional design. It was an online program management company, which has a corporate feel, but works with institutions to stand up online courses and programs, accelerated courses and programs. Then after that, it was really a big surprise and a lot of fun. I got a role at Amazon. So I worked for Amazon Pharmacy for about 2 years as a corporate ID. And as most of you know, Amazon decided to RTO, which equals return to office. And I'm a remote person, so that wasn't going to happen. So I did a little bit of like a brief freelance thing. And then Shauna Rory, the CEO and founder of Yellow Dig, brought me on as like a marketing person and then promoted me to the director of growth marketing based off of all my experience. She's been on my show. Um, and we just happened from there. Didn't apply for the role. So here I am, no marketing degree, sitting in a marketing role, have a vast amount of instructional design experience, ed tech, all the different things. My degrees are in those different areas, but I do a variety of different things. As you said, out on LinkedIn, I do job postings and have really built a large following there of helping people.
I love it. And with that background, I mean, you've seen pretty much a little bit of everything and a lot more. And so I love that you bring that lens and so many different perspectives as far as, the learning and development and of course instructional design because I mean working with so many different companies and a variety of learners. I mean, you really, really have to know your learners. And as you go from,
100%.
from area to area, I mean, you really need to know who your audience is, how they learn, and things that are easiest for them. And to be honest with you, I really like that you mentioned that here I am with no marketing degree. And so it kind of it's very interesting because it's a little similar to like myself, and I know I've mentioned it in a lot of episodes. It's like I came into education not with an education degree. I actually came into marketing, excuse me, into education with a marketing degree.
So we're the
So
opposite.
yeah, so the opposite, but it falls in line with what you said. It's like here I am, being in charge of marketing, but for me, marketing and what I learned through sales in my 4 years of experience in knowing customers, I truly, truly believe that that has helped me be very successful in the classroom. Not
Yep.
knowing, let's say, the education theory. Of course, as you go through the years, you start learning that, you start building up your skill set within the education setting. But at the end of the day, I always saw my classroom is customer first. My students, I have 30 different customers that I have to sell a subject to. In that case, when I first started, it was algebra. So I had 30
Whoa.
customers I had to sell algebra to, and not everybody bought it the exact same way. So I had people here that wanted cup holders, people here that didn't want cup holders and things of that sort. But it's all a matter of leveraging their strengths. And it's interesting because in math, we're trying to solve problems, but in reality, I'm trying to solve their problem to help them solve those problems. So it's very interesting. Like I said, that you mentioned knowing your customers. I think that's something that is it just goes back to the basics of it in anything that we do. And I think that that's fantastic. And of
Yep.
course, your tech background, I mean, geez, chef's kiss to that because I know that that helps you stay at the forefront of a lot of the things that you're currently doing. So I love
Yeah.
that. That's multiple hats right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really gotta know the ecosystem, right? You gotta be in it. You gotta if you are in the selling side of things, you have to understand what's happening internally and what the different moving parts that exist, the barriers, the challenges, in order for the you to sell, quote unquote, the technology, and get it integrated into the institution. So we are actually like examples of how transferable skills between different industries are like it does happen. I know some people are like, well, if I don't have a degree or if I don't have this insert said skill here, I can't do this job. I think that's a blocker for many people, and that's the
Yeah.
imposter syndrome creeping
Yes.
in. But you and I are prime examples. Marketing degree, ed tech, a not marketing degree in ed tech.
Yes.
so, so
Yeah.
we're great examples.
Exactly. And 18 years later, I mean, believe it or not, like I always tell people, it's like I never expected to go into education. As a matter of fact, it was never at the forefront for me. It's like for me, it was like, oh, business finance. I'm gonna go make millions of dollars and take care of my parents and do all of this. But I
Right.
landed in education and I absolutely fell in love with it. There was just something about it. And 18 years later, here I am, and probably within the next month, I'll be defending my dissertation. And I was like,
Love
who would
it.
have thought? Who would have thought, like you mentioned, and so I wanna touch a little bit about what you said. I know we'll get into the meat of it, but I think that this is very important that you mentioned is many times people think, "Well, I don't have that specific or particular skill," and that imposter syndrome sets in, but oftentimes, maybe we don't see that we do have that skill because maybe it plays out different whether you're in a classroom or it plays out different whether you're in corporate or whether you're in sales, but there is that transferability. And so, one thing that I always recommend, and even for myself, that I learned some wise words, and I don't know where I picked them up from, is don't disqualify yourself. Let them disqualify you. So you
Yeah.
go ahead and put that app in. You go ahead and update that resume and put in that application, and don't let the imposter syndrome kick in. So, and which is something that we'll talk a little bit about now because one of the things that you do on LinkedIn and you do so well, like you mentioned, is you really put yourself out there. It's the human first learning strategist. That's something that you put there, continually, and you always have this human connection with so many people as far as job postings and things of that sort. But I want to ask you, as far as that is concerned, uh, tell me a little bit about that. Like, what is it that you love about helping, of course, our learners and our educators and all our friends there on LinkedIn? What is it that really drives that for you?
I think it's just a part of giving back. Like once you're at you reach a certain stage of your life or a certain stage of your career, it's important to kind of mentor the people who are coming up and offering that opportunity. It's kind of like when you have a kid, you don't want them to make the same mistakes that you made in life. So you mentor them to do things differently than you did. And that's how I feel. Not that the LinkedIn community are my children, because that's too many children, but I feel like there's a purpose there, to share my experiences, share the tips, don't keep things a secret. That's one of the things I love about the L&D community is we're all so open. I'm an L&D is learning and development, if
Mhm.
you haven't picked that up yet. Is we're also open and willing to share our experiences, and everybody's is different, but there you'll see some commonalities across there. So that's what really keeps me going is giving people the opportunity to step outside. Teachers come from a lot of trauma and step outside the classroom and do something different that's still meaningful because teachers go into teaching because they are a particular person. They have particular goals. They're intrinsically motivated. They understand people. They're emotional. They're intuitive. They feel different things. And I think that, stepping into an L&D role is a great one for educators. So just to answer your question, it's definitely time to give back. I'm middle aged now, been in the game like you for about 18 years. And I'm just like, you know what? It's important for me to tell people, like, this is how things are going in the job market, or this is how things are going in instructional design and what's impacting us as an ecosystem. And then offer them actionable tips, advice, resources, things that they can use to get started where they don't feel like, oh my gosh, there's just 10,000 different things to do. Well, here are 3 things you can do today. Like bang, 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 do those things today. I did a webinar recently with iSpring, the ID make or the makeover of your resume. And I can't tell you, like, I just shared exactly what I did. And people were like, they're like blown away by some of these tips and how easy it is. Like you said, we create this barrier inside of ourselves that when we're applying for roles or when we're transitioning positions that we're not good enough, we're our own worst critic in the
And
sense that we are creating this manifestation in our minds that we're not going to be able to do this or they're not going to hire us because we don't have this experience. But in my mind, when that's happening, you are interviewing that company and organization just as much as they're interviewing you because you want a place where you fit and you feel passionate and they support you in your endeavors just as much as you're supporting them. So, leave imposter syndrome at home. I get it all the time. So I have to be my own, like take my own advice. But you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. So you want to be at a place where you fit.
I love it. Great tips. And I know recently you've been doing a lot more of that on LinkedIn and putting yourself out there. And really, like you said, one of the great things that I love that you do is not only, do you help by putting up job postings, but also just the fact of sharing your own experiences and, here are the things that work or here are the things to look out for. And just practical advice that for many that, like you said, those 2 to 3 gems that they can sprinkle to what they're already doing great can just really open up doors and open up, opportunities for them and overcome that imposter syndrome like you mentioned. But going back again to the human first learning
Mhm.
strategist tagline, of course, we see it on LinkedIn, on your podcasting community. And but I want to ask you, what does that mean to Holly Owens, especially when right now we see AI getting pushed or keep pushing the learning?
Howdy, y'all. It's Farmer Fobbs from Book Creator. Now, listen up, partner. If you're wrangling lesson plans and trying to keep your students engaged, I got just the tool for you. Now, remember, every student and teacher deserves a yeehaw moment, and Book Creator can give you just that. Book Creator makes it easy to get your students creating, collaborating, and sharing their ideas all in one place. Book Creator turns any classroom into a digital frontier, whether it's interactive notebooks, portfolios, or good old storytelling. Now, did I tell you it plays nice with all the other favorite apps? Egg Smash It. I mean App Smash It with Adobe, Google, and much more to take creativity to greener pastures. So saddle up and give it a try. Use promo code MyEdTechLife for a 3-month special treat.
Yeah. Um, what I'll say is that it doesn't matter to me how many different AIs or if we step into like this iRobot scene of the Will Smith movie and AI is taking over things. I recently, and then just as a full side note, I saw an article on People magazine that somebody asked the AI bot, they proposed to them like engagement.
Mm,
And I'm
mm,
like, this is getting a little bit out of hand here. So one of the things I believe is that AI, a lot of people feel like it's going to replace you, but the emotional aspect of the human mind that's irreplaceable. So putting the human at the center of everything at the conversation to me means being able to still talk to each other not through AI, but as real individuals, and share those human experiences is important because many times you'll see out at LinkedIn or even in some of the social media platforms as people are just sharing their lives. They're sharing with you what they want you to see. They want you to see the butterflies and the rainbows, but really that's not how the experience is. And I'll give you an example. The job, although I worked at Amazon, I didn't get the job the first time. I had to wait a whole year to get the instructional design job at Amazon Pharmacy when I first applied for it. An internal candidate got that, and that happens more often than not. So the human piece to me is just supporting each other. I mean, AI can only do that to a certain extent. With writing different cover letters or helping with your resume or sending different emails or communication out. There still needs to be that piece of you in the conversation, the piece of you in the story. And your story is so unique to anyone, like what you've experienced in life. It's not just about your professional life. We also all, believe it or not, have personal lives. I remember when my
Mhm.
students used to see me in the grocery store and they're like, "You grocery shop?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, how am I supposed to eat?" You think I could just, like, I'm a normal person. I do different things outside of the office, outside of the podcast. So I think bringing us back to the basics into that is really connecting with each other on this level, whether that be in a virtual space, because some of my very best friends I've met through LinkedIn. Like some of the people that I
Mhm.
trust the most, like Luke Hobson, Heidi Kirby, just interacting with those people. It's important to do that still. One of the things that Yellow did that we value is authentic connections and conversations with people. You can sit down and I can guarantee within probably 60 to 120 seconds of the conversation, you're going to find something you have in common with the person. And you're going to be like, your brain's going to go off and be like, oh yeah, like I've had that similar experience. I don't think AI can do that yet.
Yes. Yeah. So,
Yet.
but that's the, like you mentioned, and right now I know there's a lot of hype. We do see where there's some practical uses for it, and it's like, okay, if it's great, that's fantastic. There's also the other side where it's like hype, this is it, like this is going to solve the world's problems. And then of course you get both sides. And and I always say here on the podcast, it's like I really find myself kind of in the middle. I'm kind of like a wait and see, but I like to move. But just being able to really research and discern what is out there, because people are passionate on both sides. People that, of course, there's articles that'll come out, is AI or LLMs destroying our neurons. So those that are in favor of, and no,
How do
it's
we
not.
know that yet? It hasn't
Yes,
been out that long.
it hasn't been out that long. How do we know that yet? How do we do this and how do we do that? So, and then of course there's people that are, like, yes, yes, it is, and this is what we're seeing. And so you see both sides, but I always try and keep it balanced. And I'm always like, okay, I'm cautiously reading and doing those things. And I think that's so important in our job roles and in our spaces where we do work with ed tech so much. So I want to ask you, for example, I know recently one of the tools that I dug into was something that you had shared, which I think it was TruePeer AI. I hope
Yeah.
I'm pronouncing it right because I know it looks like it's Trooper, but I thought it was
Yeah.
Trooper
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
first.
It's true, Peer. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
TruePeer, where it shows that you can record and then you do a screen share, and then of course it'll create, course material like in minutes, like in a flash. So I want to ask you, what goes through your mind working in the L&D space, learning and development, and then of course in the instructional design space, as you go and find tools like this that you discover and, like you said, openly share. What are some of the things that you look for before this is something that you would roll out to your learners? And how, if anything, does that conflict with, is there a conflict with that human first strategy many times? Tell us what your thought process is and all of that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's important to evaluate the tool like
Okay.
that you're about to share. And I'm not sharing anything that I haven't used myself. I'll say that. So anything like I'm a brand ambassador for, I'm sharing that on LinkedIn World. I've used it and I put it into practice. And I can say that some of those like TruePeer, there's Synthesia, like with the AI tools.
Mhm.
I've used all of them. And I'm actually using Synthesia in my courses that I'm teaching online. I think it's important. One of the first things I try to look for or that I make sure is available is the accessibility information about the tool. because if they are not putting accessibility at the forefront of everything, then what's the point? Like people are gonna that's gonna create barriers for people, whether they have a learning disability or not. So it's important that there's
Mhm.
accessibility in the tool, that they're able to navigate it with keyboard navigation, that kind of stuff. So those are the tools. That's one of the first things I look for. I also look to see, I'm pretty like, I don't want to say selfish, but I want it to save me time and save me money. So, and then companies are looking for that too. So with TruePeer, that saves a ton of time when you've recorded something and it's spitting out like the how-tos and the video with the captions and all the different things. Just think about pre-AI, how much time that took instructional designers to create that. That would probably take me a week or two
Yeah.
to do those things manually and type everything out and make sure it sounds right. So now instead of just coming up with the description of the video or coming up with the script, AI is doing that for me. And I'm going through and I'm reading and saying, nope, take this out. This doesn't sound like this is a part of this because, AI is not perfect. Or put this in. This sounds more like, it's giving you an insider perspective or like a tip that you should use like at this portion or with this
Yeah.
feature of the tool. So you still have to go through and evaluate what is actually being said. You can't just say, okay, put it in there. It's all done. Put it out. No, there still needs to be a process where you're like, okay, does this sound good for the learner? Is this something that they're going to understand? Is there a lot of jargon that possibly AI is getting wrong or is putting into the conversation? Because, from accessibility, the reading level is supposed to be around 6th to 8th grade. So it's simplified enough so that learners can like understand it. So I think those are from some of the first things that I do. But if it's a tool that saves me time and saves the company money, why not try it? Test it out, see what's gonna happen. And yeah, there oftentimes is a conflict between the human aspect of that, and because we're all right now with AI, we're moving even faster to
Yeah.
get things done. So sometimes that quality might get sacrificed, and that's the human piece of it, like the emotional tie, the psyche. Figuring out like, is this something an activity that people are really going to like, enjoy doing, or am I just doing this to get it done? Is it a checklist item? And then, you know, if you have a long to-do list like many of us do, you're checking it off the list. You're like, I did this, but you may or may not have properly and appropriately evaluated the tool. So I recommend doing like some pilots with people or testing with the end user before you full blown just put it out there and saying it's solving all your problems, because as far as I'm concerned, there's no technology at this point that's out there that solves all the problems instructional designers and learning and experience designers and everybody in the L&D, whoever, are trying to solve. But this AI is giving us what we need in terms of having the creative mind space. Because as an instructional designer and a human first person, I want to talk to other people. I want
Yeah.
to sit in a space where I can share my ideas and be creative. Doing all that manual work of setting stuff up that AI is taking care of now allows me to do that. So it frees me up to have coffee chats or conversations with my coworkers instead of like, oh, I got to think of another fun-filled FOMO webinar description, or I got to think of a title that's going to work. I got to set up all the components of it. No, I can actually sit in the creative space and think about like, how am I going to make this meaningful to people and really focus on the what's in it for me from the learner perspective.
The way we learn is changing. Are you ready to transform education? Welcome to Yellow Dig, where learning isn't just another assignment, it's a conversation, a movement, a game changer. With Yellow Dig, students engage naturally, sharing ideas, exploring concepts, and driving conversations that matter. No forced post, no busy work, just real learning. Educators, you'll see the difference. Higher engagement, deeper understanding, and a thriving community of learners who want to participate. From higher ed to workforce training, Yellow Dig fuels curiosity, collaboration, and connection inside and outside of the classroom. The future of learning is here. Are you in? Yellow Dig, connecting minds and igniting possibilities.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that because I wanted to highlight it. Kind of goes in with the next question that I was saying. You still need that human piece because, as you mentioned, with tools like Synthesia, and being used and heavily in the instructional design space, sometimes you feel like, okay, this is great because it's saving me that time. But then at the same time, is it turning into just kind of like a bland homogenation of, excuse me, homogenization of learning where it just seems like very cookie cutter and it's just very bland. So I think, like you mentioned, you have to find that right balance where you are using the tech appropriately, again, like you mentioned, to save you time, but then of course revising and going back and still adding that human component and that quality piece to make that connection. And I think that I wanted to bring in just a comment from a good friend of mine that I follow. And she mentioned, she said, and she posted, she said that she just got out of the keynote and she delivered a keynote and she said, I already had this keynote months ahead, months behind, or, months prior to this
Prepared,
because,
right?
yeah, well, I don't know if it was she was prepared. It was, well, I guess it was just having a keynote just ready to go because you never know when you're going to get called. And so obviously she mentioned and she said, guys, she goes, I used, obviously AI to help me do this keynote. But she said, as I was delivering this keynote, and I'm looking and I'm feeling the presentation and I'm going, it's like, this isn't me. Like she came
Right.
to this realization where like, this isn't
Yeah.
my voice. And she goes, you know what? She goes, I'm going to kind of dial it back just a little bit, just to kind of like, and that is something that was on my mind many, many months ago where I was like, okay, where do we get to the point where, like you said, we're putting out the quantity, but then we're losing ourselves within the quality of that and losing our own voice and just kind of reeling it back in. How have you dealt with that? Have you come to a point where you feel like, man, I'm doing all this great work. I'm doing what I need to for my jobs, for my learners. And then you think about like, oh my gosh, like, is there enough of me in here? Is there enough voice? Is there
Yeah.
enough of my personality in here to make that human connection? What has gone through your mind during this time?
When AI spits out stuff that doesn't sound like me, I prompt it to say sound like me. Or I put more stuff into it that sounds like me. Like recently, working in the podcast and working in the tool that I use, it can do the AI voice. It does not sound like me. It is so far from what it sounding like with the intonation and the different things that we can do as humans. So one of the things that I like to do is, I go through whatever I'm prompting it to do, and I'm like, yeah, I get that feeling. It really doesn't sound like me. So I say, tell it to sound like me a little bit more, and then I tweak it a little bit more to give it that more positive spin. Because sometimes AI is just so generic and top level, it doesn't really have that emotional part of it, and I think that's the part we touch on most as humans is the emotional
Um,
aspect. So I go back through it and I put some emotion into it, like really deep, like feeling connected to each other instead of this like very generic top level, like, okay, here's a resource, have fun using it. Um, I think storytelling AI also helps with that too. So AI, I mean, ChatGPT knows who I am. It knows my story. It knows from start to finish, like, where I started my career, and it's learned that, but it doesn't know everything. Like, it doesn't know every little piece. Like, you don't know about the struggles that I may have had, like, as far as like mental health is concerned. When my father passed away in 2011 and he took his own life, like it doesn't know that story and how that impacted me as a human because AI hasn't experienced that and it doesn't know what it's like. I'm just bringing up like the grief part of it to go be grieving as you're trying to still be a professional, still trying to be a human. So I think it's important that we recognize that, but also too, you're learning AI just as much as it's learning you. So as you're putting in the different prompts, like you're trying to figure out like what you want it to spit out in the sense like I think sometimes my words are just too simplistic. Not simplistic in the way like I'm dumbing it down, but it's like I want to say it differently. Like I want to say it more professionally, more clear to the point. And AI helps me with that. So that's what I use it for. But other times I need some ideas. I need some things like, make me a list of this or show me this or It really does. I learned through AI and like with some of the things that are happening with it, like you can do research mode. And like as an academic, oops, I had my microphone. That's important. You need to have research to back up what you're saying to faculty or what you're doing in the classroom. So having that availability is helping tremendously too. So on one hand, it's really is giving you that more free time and it's more speedy. But again, that human piece has to constantly come back
Mhm.
into it and you have to connect with others. Like I don't I don't I don't know how that person got to the point where they like fell in love with AI. I mean, I know there's a movie about it, but it
Yeah.
really it's like I don't know.
Yeah.
It's probably a topic for another day, but I was just like when I saw the article, I was like, this is insane to me.
Yeah.
Like this person is too connected to the artificial
Cool.
intelligence and is not getting out enough back into the human actual experience
And
um
yeah.
of connecting like relationships need like physical interaction. Like I don't even want to go there, but like thinking about that and like AI doesn't understand like, how we need it's not human to me.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
it's not human. That's the bottom line to me. It's not human.
Yeah. And no, and I understand what you mean too, because I think there has to be that element too of that digital wellness and understanding that
Digital
this,
wellness. Yeah.
yeah, digital wellness. And I had in the last episode, episode 326, because I think this is 327. Wait, I'm kind of lost in the episodes, but anyway,
I
it
wrote
was
down it was
okay.
364 when we were talking at the beginning.
Oh,
I wrote it
never
down.
mind. I don't think I think I got my numbers mixed up. I kind of flipped it, but it's okay.
Some
Don't worry. So this is 327. Sorry, 327. Oh my goodness. 327. But I had Dr. Teodora Pavkovich on here and she was talking about the digital wellness component and at least in the youth, because she does a lot of work with the youth, but she was saying, there was a research that was done that even about, I think it was higher than 60% of young adults, in the K-12 space, middle school and up, are spending a lot of time just using AI companions, and they build up this parasocial relationship where it's a true tie and a true connection to it. And so it just, I don't know, it's very interesting. And like you said, that's something for another day that we can discuss, but it's something that is coming up and very prevalent. And now this was put up on the air, and I'm sure that a lot of people are like, wow, this is very interesting. But okay,
it
going
is.
back though to the ID space and the learning and development space, I want to ask you, so now that AI can help instructional designers, with videos and creating, some scripts and creating the avatars and so on, what are some core, still some core instructional design skills that should be non-negotiables for IDs who want to stay ahead, as the technology continues to push forward?
Yeah, you have to be open to trying things. I
Mhm.
feel like you can't be a closed-minded individual when it comes to technology. So that's the first thing that comes to mind for me. When I think about this, I think about the diffusion of innovation theory, where you have at the beginning, like the people who are like automatically like we're gonna use this. Like I'm gonna get this fancy, colorful microphone because it's a conversation starter. I love this. It's gonna work for me. And then you have at the end of that, you have the Luddites, the people who take forever, and academia is notorious for this, to actually grab onto the technology and use it efficiently and be like, we probably should have been using that a long time ago. So I think it's important to understand it through that perspective. You have to be open minded to using it and trying it. It may not work for you and what you're currently doing, and that's fine. Just take a spin, take a turn for that. Also, too, I think I want to talk to a little bit of things that I've been experiencing or having conversations with people who are transitioning to this space. Is the fact that people the term proficiency, like, how does proficiency look in the instructional design space? So, if we're talking about you're coming into an instructional design role, when you're proficient in AI, what does that mean? Like, does that mean you're advanced? Does that mean you're at the beginning stage? Or does that mean what I say, you know enough just to be dangerous with the technology, dangerous in a good way? I think proficiency is thrown around like in different spaces and it means different things. So figure out where the proficiency, what they're truly asking for, and be proficient enough to understand the tool, how it impacts your learners, how it impacts the learning experience, because people, I think they confuse proficiency with advanced knowledge of the tool or advanced things. I don't know. I wanted to ask you about that. That's one of the things I was thinking yesterday when people were talking in the webinar that I did. What does it mean to be proficient in a technology tool? Like, I think proficiency could be at the very basic level. You just have a very basic understanding.
Yeah, I agree with you. Oftentimes that it's like, well, I'm proficient in this, I'm proficient in that. But where's the scale? Was there a test? Was there a badge? Was
Yeah.
there a course that you went through? Is there a certificate? And for me, proficiency is like you said, it's enough to understand, that environment or that tool that you're using. And like you said, enough to be effective and still be productive all at the same time while still learning and you're still working on this and mastering that tool. I mean, in my case, working as a coordinator for digital learning, there's a new tool that's being adopted, or a new platform. It's like, okay, I need to do my research. I need to
Yeah.
go ahead and play around with it first. And I go in with my teacher mindset, and I'm always looking for user experience, user interface. And sometimes I'm like, ooh, like you don't have teachers designing this, or you asked a teacher because this is not the
Yeah.
way that I would put that. For me, my rule is always 3 clicks or less to get me where I need to go. If it's 3 or
Yep.
more, you're out the door. I'm not a fan of that, but
Yeah.
anyway, just being proficient, being able to just manage the website or manage the platform to do what it is that you need to do. But I love that you mentioned that, because as I was thinking about this too, I was like, there really isn't a scale. It's almost like when they do an evaluation, it's like, oh, well, you're using tech, even though you may be using a document camera. Oh, you're using tech. Excellent.
Right.
You're doing
You're
great.
an
But
advance, you get a
yeah,
star.
you're in
Yeah.
advance. I was like, "But that's a document camera." And then, and
Yeah.
the next person is using, a PDF, annotation tool. It's like, "Oh, okay, excellent. You're like beyond proficient." So it's like, I guess it just depends on the person. But yeah, that is a wonderful question that you mentioned. And
I
so
would I would love for the audience to comment on this episode and say, what do they think proficiency means? Like, comment on the
yeah.
LinkedIn post that goes along with this, because I'm really interested. It's really taken some time because people, again, this goes back to the imposter syndrome. They don't think they're
Mhm.
proficient, but they might be proficient. And I think the final thing that I would say for instructional designers or being in the L&D space is, if you are not a human that can deal with change, this is not the area for you, because something is changing every single day. So being able to assimilate to change management, that goes with the open-mindedness as well. We
Yeah.
kind of correlate with each other. If you can't deal with shifts and priorities, like if you're focused, like I have to get this one task done, and then something else kind of comes up, or you're designing a learning experience, and then the part of the process changed, so you have to go back, like, why? This meeting gave me the content. No, it's changed now. The higher ups have done whatever, whatever, and now it's different. You have to be able to assimilate to that, but also do it with grace, because you're the
Mhm.
person that everybody's looking to as the expert, and you're the person like, yeah, we can get that done, but also saying on the other side of that, it's going to add more time to the project. So
Yeah.
being able to advocate in that aspect as well when the change does happen. So let's see, we
Yeah.
went there. We said open mind, what does it mean? Like being proficient in something, and then also to being able to assimilate the quick and fast
Yeah.
changes.
I always say, like, my best advice, and I give it to not only best advice that was given to me that I shared recently on an episode with my friends, was improvise, adapt, and overcome. Those 3
Yeah.
words,
Yeah.
I think, like, that's helped me out too in the education space, transitioning from not knowing anything about pedagogy and knowing just everything about customer service, marketing, sales, and all the 4 Ps and all that. Coming in, it's like, okay, I got to know how to improvise, adapt, and overcome. So, and like you said, advocating for yourself, showing yourself, not only showing yourself some grace, but also doing it with grace. And so I love
Yes.
that advice. That is wonderful. All right. Well, as we start kind of wrapping up a little bit, but I still have just a couple more questions here. And now knowing, as far as AI, we know that it's not perfect. We know that we always talk about, the implicit bias, the ethics of it, maybe just even not only the return on investment, but the return on instruction and the
Mhm.
trust. So I want to ask you, from your experience, what are some ethical red flags that learning developers or instructional designers should think about before deploying a tool at scale?
Yeah. I mean, I go back to the basics here, and what you made me think of when you asked that question is when somebody comes to you and they're giving you a PowerPoint presentation and they're telling you to turn it into something pretty, and they're not thinking about the experience itself and how it's impacting the end user. Again, going back to that checklist. So if they're coming in and they're saying just use AI to generate this as quickly as possible, that's a huge red flag to me because and they're not going to give you the time to evaluate the tool as needed. It's like coming into a relationship and it's all butterflies and rainbows at the beginning. And then they say, well, I have whatever secret, I have a family somewhere else. I just found out I had a kid I didn't know about, stuff like that. So exposing those things at the beginning or like the rushiness of implementing the product or the deliverable, that's a huge red flag to me because to me that says that the leadership doesn't quite understand the learning sciences and they don't respect the instructional design process. It's a process. Everything has to be it doesn't necessarily move in linear fashion, but if they come in like just do it, just use AI, and we know you guys have AI, just use it and make it pretty. It shouldn't take you that long now because you have AI. That's a red flag. That's a
Yeah.
huge red flag for me.
No,
Um,
most definitely.
yeah, the
I'm just
order
like right
that
now, I'm just like, yes, you're right. And it just seems too, it's like, okay, you've got AI to do it. Now you can do it faster, but now I need you to do more. And I'm just like,
yeah,
whoa,
right.
slow down. Quality over quantity, or do you want quantity over quality?
Yeah, and I think most of the time, some people in that situation will say quantity, and then they'll realize through the evaluation process that that wasn't the right decision for learners because people are, you may be experiencing like when I was working in pharmacy, like we had these stops. Like if something happened on the pharmacy floor, we had like things just shut down, and people weren't trained properly because we
Mhm.
did the training fast and we didn't hone in on like what the actual issue was. So again, that's a huge red flag to me. Being order takers and just getting things done fast, I don't think that's effective at all. But on the other side of that, you have to find the balance between designing the experience, getting the quality in, making sure that the stakeholders and SMEs feel loved and that you're doing it within a timely fashion. But also too, and the learners are experiencing something that's going to change their behavior for sure. So pretty PowerPoint presentations turning into e-learnings or, just getting something done, a deliverable, turning around. Not everything has to be a training. Kathy Moore says that in her book, Map It. You have to ask the questions. It doesn't really need to be a training. It could be a job aid. It could be something else.
Yeah.
So if they're asking you just to do a training for the sake of doing a training, that's a red flag too.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And that got me thinking about so many things. I was like, does this need to be a training or could this just be like a PDF tutorial walkthrough or could it just be
Right.
a
People
2 minute
can
video?
bookmark it. They can
Yeah,
favorite it. They can come back to it.
2 minute video or whatever, or just like either using IORAD, Scribe, or Tango or something, just to walk them through. And that's what I have too. Like as I get calls, from teachers, it's like, hey, I need this, or help with this. Those are my go into my frequently asked document. And then what I do is
Yeah.
once I create something, I just have it there, and then here you go. Here you go, and here you go. Because, like you said, doing a whole training on it, there really doesn't need to be a whole training, but doing the training for training's sake, that's something that we do see often. All right,
Yeah.
Holly. So my last question for you before we get into our last three questions that we always end the show with
Yeah.
is looking ahead with your experience in the next, maybe let's say short term, 2 to 3 years, what are some tasks, that in the ID world and L&D world that you see will eventually become fully automated by AI? But then what would be some skills though that, the human designers should sharpen to remain indispensable?
Yeah. I think maybe it's more of a hope this is going to happen with AI is doing the cumbersome work of like responding to emails or going to meetings. I really feel like that takes up too much of our time at this point, and there are some tools out there that can like respond and do different things that the hard stuff, like the stuff that you would say you would probably pass off to somebody who's like an administrative assistant or an executive assistant. The administrative task, I really feel like AI is going to take care of that. One of the tools I use to kind of project manage is Motion. because I'll put in like what the project is, how long I think it's going to take, and then it'll put on my calendar when I need to work on it and by whatever due date it needs. So it sets it all up for me. So really not having to think through like, oh, this might take me an hour, or this might take me 10 hours. You never know with instructional design. For the next 2 to 3 years, I really see AI becoming more advanced in that. Image generation of things that we need to use graphics and things for. I even see it in like videos, like, like, when you talked about TruePeer, it's already spitting stuff out for us. Again, you still have to evaluate it. I don't see it fully being like, okay, it's good to go. You're still going to have to evaluate
Mhm.
that piece. But I really think in the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to save us a lot more time on some of these tasks that we call it the grunt work that we don't like to do. And it's just going to be built into the systems we use every day. And we're not even going to notice it. That's the thing. We're not going to notice that AI is doing it for us. It's just going to become common. Like, I'm an elder millennial, so I remember logging into AOL and hearing the little thing, and then you got mail. Like, it's just gonna, like, it just became a part of the culture. It just became a part of everything that we do. We're not going to notice if AI is answering our emails in an effective way. And, it learned us so well that it knows how to respond exactly to this particular situation or design this particular piece of the learning experience. It's just going to be there. It's not going to be a conversation of whether or not we should be using AI. It's just going to be there. It's going to be a part of the culture. It's going to be a part of the workflow.
Excellent. Well, Holly, thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation. But before we wrap up and end the show with the last three questions, please let our audience members know how it is that they may connect with you in case, they listen to the episode, they want to follow you on socials, they want to maybe send you a message, just something to make those connections. Let us know, how can our audience members connect with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the place to be for me. That's where I spend 99.9% of my time is LinkedIn world. So shoot me a message. I'm happy to respond. It might take me a little bit, but I definitely respond to almost every message beyond the ones of people soliciting stuff to me. Or Fonz, I'm sure you get this too. People, they send me their resume and they're like, can you review this for me? And they
Oh,
say nothing. They're just like, can you review? No, I don't respond to those. I respond to people who pay attention to what I'm doing and who are also motivated to want to do better for others and themselves. So LinkedIn World is where to find me. Of course, listening to my podcast, Ed Up L&D. You just listen to the shows and you can connect with me there. But LinkedIn is where it's at for me. So Holly
perfect.
Owens.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll definitely make sure that we put
I'll
your
fill out the
LinkedIn.
form too.
Yeah, well, we'll go ahead and put that link in there, and also for your podcast too as well. Great valuable. I know the last conversations that you've had on there too. I'm like, okay, this is great, and so it kind of like ties into what we were talking about today because I know
Mhm.
these are a lot of questions that have come about, and so I just thank you so much for your time. But we'll definitely make sure that we link all of that great stuff on there into the show notes. That way, you can connect with Holly and follow her. She is fantastic. She'll do the jobs. Do job postings, gives great tips. And recently she's been doing, just some live shows, just putting herself out there and just sharing her experiences. So if you're interested in the learning and development space, in the ID space, resumes, things of that sort, it seems like Holly's your one-stop shop. And on top of that, she still has your regular job too that she's
Yeah.
doing. So
Yeah.
I don't know how she does it, but it's great that she's doing it. And we do all appreciate that. So thank you,
Well, thank
Holly.
you.
So now let's go ahead and wrap up our show with our last three questions.
Okay.
So, Holly, hopefully you're ready to go here. All right. So, question number one, as we know, every superhero has a weakness or a pain point. And for Superman, Kryptonite was that pain point. So, I want to ask you, in the current world of, and we'll say, you can either do two or just one as a whole, in the learning design space and in the instructional design or learning and development space and instructional design space, what would you say is your current kryptonite?
Yeah. Saying yes to too many projects. Saying yes to too many projects and like sometimes I think getting involved it's like a relationship. When you get to start an ID project, it's so much fun because you can like put in all these different ideas and try different things. It's like trial and error and saying yes to that. But then you get to the point to past the honeymoon stage of the project. And you're like, why did I do this? And then I have this project and that project. So saying yes to too many things is my kryptonite.
Excellent. Great question. And I think that's for a lot of us too, is just saying yes. And all right. So question number 2 is if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Um, well, that's a great question, and I know you asked these on your show, and I'm all prepared in my answers, and now I'm like blanking out. But I think one of the things, I would really make it like about. I obviously want to make it something about me, like advertising the different things that I love, or just something about encouragement. I'm trying to really think of something good. I love sports and how that all integrates into connecting with other humans. It would definitely be a billboard about human connection, and remembering to like put your phones down and talk to other people.
Yeah.
I think it would be something along those lines. Not anything. Recently, I love anything elder millennial, like Shira stuff. Just got a Shira 40th mug. She's the Princess of Power. It was a big thing when I was
Yes.
younger.
Oh my
Just
gosh.
empowerment. Human
Love it.
connection, empowerment. That's what the billboard would be.
Empower human connection. Ah,
Yeah, that's there you
empower
go.
empowered human
Empowered human
connection.
connection. Oh,
Yes.
that's like a great website slogan. I'm gonna write that one down.
There you go. And it's fantastic. I mean, you brought up Shira. I grew up obviously. Okay, so before I went to school, I would wake up. I think it was either like 5:30 or maybe 6 o'clock, and then of course they had the Bigfoot cartoon. I think they had Shira also in the morning, and like Gem and the Rockers
Yeah.
or something. And then in the
Yep.
afternoon, I come home and it'd be like He-Man and Transformers and all. So
Yep.
I grew up with all of that. I'm just like, oh, so right
I'm
now
very tied to, like, the nostalgia of, like, the '80s and the
I'm
'90s.
getting into that now that I'm an adult and now that I have adult money, I'm like, "Oh, yeah," like buy little
It's bad.
transformer Legos and things of that sort because now I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's like this is so great." I just remembering those times and, different times back then, but good
For
times.
sure.
So, alright, and my last question for you, Holly, is if you could trade places with one person for a single day, who would that be and why?
Um, I'd like to trade persons with Taylor Swift. Honestly, I wanna experience Taylor Swift doesn't get to experience what she's built in our culture and for people around the globe. Like, I want her to be able to experience it from our perspective, and then I want to experience it from her perspective. Like all the different things that she's done and like just the closeness of the people that she has around her. I think
Yeah.
that, I always when I talk about like Yellow Dig and stuff, I always really the experience like Taylor has this huge community who advocates for her, who they work even when she's not like visible, like they're always there supporting her no matter what. And I love that. And I think that's what the human connection is about. And she does a great job of that. So I definitely want to trade places with Taylor Swift. I mean, $1 billion, like pay all my bills, student loan debt off. That too. That's a perk.
Well, that would be great. But honestly, Holly, I would, with as much as you do, like I mentioned earlier, I definitely liken you to kind of the Taylor Swift of the L&D space and the LinkedIn space because of everything that you do. You are that unicorn that you talked about in your elevator pitch, where, I mean, not only are you sharing job postings, you're going on live. You're sharing your experiences. You're doing the job at Yellow Dig. You're doing your podcast. And on top of that, you've got just your regular
Regular
everyday
old
things that
life.
you do. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you're truly living like a rock star," And even then, you've got people that are, supporting you because of all the great things that you're doing. So you're not that far off. I would say that you get maybe financially, of
Yeah,
course,
that
there
it
might be a
definitely
little
not
bit
gonna
of
be $1 billion thing. We don't go
yeah.
into this for the money, right, Fonz?
Yeah, yeah. So, but I love it. Holly, thank you so much. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you. Thank you for being an amazing guest and just an amazing person. And obviously, with all the great work that you do, I can't stop talking about highly of you, especially the things that you're doing on LinkedIn and just sharing yourself and putting yourself out there. And you're definitely a great example. And like I mentioned to you earlier, some of the things that you're doing are some of the things that I want to learn how to do and do better. And so, this has really helped that too
All
as
you gotta
well,
do
and
is just try it once and see
yeah,
how it goes.
there you
Yep.
go. Well, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. I really appreciate you. And for all our audience members, thank you so much for listening to this great episode. Make sure that you follow Holly. All of those, all that info, the links, and all that great stuff will be in the show notes. So make sure that you click on those. Follow Holly on LinkedIn. Make sure you also follow the EdUp podcast too as well. And of course, thank you as always for your support. I want to give a big shout out to our sponsors. Thank you, Book Creator. Thank you, Eduate. And thank you, Yellow Dig. We really appreciate you believing in our mission and bringing you these amazing conversations with wonderful people that are helping just equip the masses out there on LinkedIn and just really supporting them. So thank you as always from the bottom of my heart. Please make sure you visit our website where you can check out this amazing episode and all the other wonderful episodes where I guarantee you will find a couple of gems that you can sprinkle onto what you are already doing great. So thank you as always. And my friends, don't forget, until next time, stay techie.